My hands were ink-stained from the closing packets stacked across my desk when I saw the address. I almost missed it. It was a Tuesday afternoon, slow enough that I was half listening to my coworker ramble about her weekend, clicking through the title search queue on autopilot. And then the street name jumped off the screen at me like a slap. 14 Wren Hollow Lane. I stopped breathing for exactly 3 seconds. Then I leaned forward and read the whole file. The property owner listed was my brother, and the buyer was a development company called Meridian Group LLC. And the sale was scheduled to close in 48 hours. I sat back in my chair very slowly. My coworker was still talking. I smiled at her and said, "Sorry, give me 1 second." And then I picked up my phone and texted my attorney. Not my family, my attorney, because I already knew what my brother had done. And I already knew how to stop it. But you need to understand where this started, because it didn't start on a Tuesday afternoon in a title company office. It started 2 years ago, in a craftsman house on Wren Hollow Lane, on the last good day I ever had with my grandmother. My grandmother's name was Ruth. She was 81 years old, 5 feet tall, and the most quietly powerful person I have ever known. She built her whole life in that house, raised 3 kids in it, buried a husband from it, grew a garden in the backyard that people in the neighborhood actually stopped to photograph. She made her chicken and dumplings on Sunday mornings, and she read actual physical newspapers, and she remembered every birthday without writing them down. And when her health started failing 2 years ago, she called my brother and me into her kitchen and told us clearly, without any drama, what she wanted to happen when she was gone. "The house goes to both of you equally," she said. 50-50. You figure out together what to do with it. Keep it, sell it, whatever you decide. But you decide it together. She looked at my brother when she said that last part. I noticed that at the time. I filed it away. My brother's name is Daniel. He's 34, 5 years older than me, and for most of our lives, I genuinely admired him. He was the one who taught me to ride a bike, who called me every week when I went off to college, who showed up to help me move 4 times without ever complaining. He was charming in the way that certain people are charming, the kind of charm that makes you feel like the most important person in the room whenever he's talking to you. People love Daniel. People have always loved Daniel. What I didn't fully understand until recently is that my brother is also a person who has been quietly borrowing money his whole adult life and quietly failing to pay it back. Not in dramatic ways, in small, plausible ways. A loan from a friend to cover rent, paid back 6 months late. A credit card transferred to a new one, and then left to grow. A business venture he'd had 3 of them that just never quite got off the ground. Each time, there was a reasonable explanation. Each time, he was almost there, just needed a little more time. Each time, the people who loved him gave it to him. Our grandmother gave him money twice that I knew about, probably more that I didn't. I'm a title officer at a real estate closing firm. I've worked there for 6 years. I know what property fraud looks like because I've been trained to catch it. I know what forged signatures look like. I know what a fraudulently filed deed looks like. I know all of this because it is literally my job to know it. Which is why, when I pulled up the full file on 14 Wren Hollow Lane that Tuesday afternoon, I understood within about 4 minutes exactly what my brother had done. Our grandmother passed 8 months ago. The will went through probate, clean and straightforward, exactly as she'd written it. The house transferred to Daniel and me as joint tenants with right of survivorship. I signed all the paperwork myself. I have copies of everything, because that is the kind of person I am. What I did not know, what I had not been told, was that 2 months after the house transferred, my brother had filed a quitclaim deed. A quitclaim deed is a document that transfers property rights from one person to another. It requires signatures from all owners. My signature was on this document. I know this because I was looking at it on my screen. I have never signed a quitclaim deed for 14 Wren Hollow Lane. My brother had transferred the property entirely into his name. And then, with sole ownership established, he had listed the house with a real estate agent not telling me, not consulting me, not even mentioning it in passing, and accepted an offer from a development company that wanted to tear it down and build a 4-unit condo complex in its place. The closing was in 48 hours. I sat at my desk for approximately 90 seconds after I understood all of this. Then I got up, walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and stood over the sink, gripping the edges of it until my hands stopped shaking. Not from grief, from the specific, focused kind of anger that only comes when someone you love looks you in the face and lies to you for months while smiling. Because I had talked to my brother. I had talked to him last week. We'd had a whole conversation about the house, what we should do with it, whether to keep renting it to the elderly couple who'd been there for 3 years, whether the roof needed replacing before we could sell. He'd had opinions. He'd asked me questions. He'd said, "We should probably decide soon, right? Get on the same page." While the closing was 48 hours away, I washed my face, went back to my desk, and sent 2 text messages. The first was to my attorney, a woman named Sandra who I'd met through work and who specialized in real estate law. The message said, "I need an emergency consultation today. Property fraud." The second text was to my brother. It said, "Hey, are you free for dinner Thursday? I want to talk about Grandma's house." He replied in 4 minutes, "Of course. Was just thinking about you. Thursday works great." I stared at that text for a long moment. Then I put my phone face down and started building the file. This is the part where my job becomes the most important thing I've ever done. Because I'm not just a person who processes paperwork. I'm a person who knows exactly where every document in a real estate transaction lives, who has access to county recorder databases, who understands chain of title the way a doctor understands an x-ray. I pulled the full title history on 14 Wren Hollow Lane. I found the quitclaim deed. I found the listing agreement. I found the purchase contract with Meridian Group. I found, buried deeper in the records, something I hadn't expected, a home equity line of credit. Filed 9 months ago, 1 month before our grandmother even passed, while she was still in hospice care and legally still the sole owner of the property. My brother had taken out a HELOC against the house for $60,000 while my grandmother was dying. He had forged her signature too. I sat with that information for a very long time. I thought about my grandmother in that hospice bed, small and quiet, her hands folded on the blanket. I thought about how she had called us both in and told us her wishes. I thought about how my brother had held her hand and said, "Don't worry about anything, Grandma. We've got it." I thought about $60,000. When I met with Sandra that evening, I laid out every document I had. She was quiet for a long time while she read through them. Then she looked at me over her reading glasses and said, "Maya, how confident are you that these signatures are forged?" "Very," I said. "I have my grandmother's actual signature on file from the original will and deed transfer. The signatures on the HELOC and the quitclaim deed are close, but they're not right. The pressure patterns are wrong. The loops are slightly different. I've looked at hundreds of forged documents. These are forged." She nodded slowly. "How much time do we have?" 41 hours, I said. She took off her glasses. "Okay, here's what we're going to do." I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and helped Sandra's office draft an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order to halt the sale. I pulled together every piece of documentation I had, the original probate records, the deed transfer, my own signed paperwork, signature comparisons, the HELOC filing, the timeline that showed the HELOC was filed while my grandmother was in hospice. I wrote a detailed declaration explaining my professional qualifications and how I had discovered the fraud. At 7:15 inches the morning, Sandra filed the motion with the court. At 9:40 inches the morning, the judge granted the TRO. At 10:02, I called my brother. He answered on the second ring, easy and warm, the way he always did. "Hey, you! I was just thinking about Thursday." "The sale is blocked," I said. "The TRO was granted this morning. The title company received the notice at 10. There was a pause. A very specific kind of pause, the kind where someone is deciding very quickly how to play the next 30 seconds. "What are you talking about?" he said. His voice had shifted just slightly. Still calm. Still reasonable. "The quitclaim deed you filed in March," I said, using a forged copy of my signature, "and the HELOC you took out against Grandma's house in September, a month before she passed, using a forged copy of her signature. And the sale you accepted from Meridian Group without telling me, to close in 48 hours? Another pause. Longer this time. "Maya," he said, and now his voice had changed completely. The warmth was gone. What replaced it wasn't anger. Exactly. It was something more like calculation. "You don't understand the full picture here." "Then explain it to me." "I'm in a difficult situation financially. I needed to make a move. The house was just sitting there. The house was legally half mine," I said. "And the HELOC was filed against a property that still belonged to Grandma while she was in hospice care. She would have wanted to help me. You know that. She wanted us to decide together," I said. "She told us that to our faces. You were there. Look, Maya." His voice shifted again, this time into something placating and a little condescending, the tone he used when he thought I was being overly emotional about something. "You're making this into a bigger thing than it needs to be. The couple renting the house was going to have to leave eventually. This was a good offer. I was going to tell you." "When?" I asked. At dinner on Thursday? After it closed on Wednesday? He didn't answer that. The $60,000 from the HELOC, I said. Where did it go? Silence. Daniel, where did it go? I had debts, he said quietly. To who? More silence. I'm asking because it matters, I said. It matters for what happens next. Sandra, my attorney, she's already been in contact with the county DA's office. Elder financial fraud is a felony in this state. Forging a deed is a felony. I haven't decided yet what I want to do. That got a reaction. You're going to call the police on your own brother? I'm telling you what my options are, I said. What you do in the next 24 hours will determine which option I choose. I hung up. My hands were shaking a little. I sat down on my couch and took about 10 slow breaths. I want to be honest about something, because I think it matters. I was not okay. I'm not one of those people who can absorb a betrayal like this and feel nothing. I kept thinking about Thanksgiving last year, how Daniel had shown up with a bottle of wine and been funny and warm all evening, how he'd helped me wash dishes after dinner, how he'd hugged me goodbye at the door. All while knowing what he'd done. All while already having filed that quitclaim deed. All while $60,000 of stolen money had already been spent. I thought about my grandmother's handwriting, the real version of it, how she always made her capital R with a little upswing at the top. How whoever had forged her signature hadn't known to do that. I thought about her in that hospice bed, and whether she had known, at the end, what was coming. Whether some part of her had known when she made him promise. I gave myself about an hour to feel all of that. Then I put it somewhere it could wait, and I went back to work. What Daniel did next surprised me. A little. I expected more fighting. I expected him to come back at me with more arguments, more justifications, maybe threats about countersuing or claiming I'd done something wrong too. Instead, he went quiet. 3 hours went by with no contact. Then he called back. His voice was different this time. Not calculated, not warm, not placating, just tired. What do you want? He said. I had thought about this carefully. I'd talked it through with Sandra. I knew exactly what I wanted. I want 3 things, I said. First, you sign a corrective deed restoring the property to joint ownership, exactly as the probate court established. Second, you provide full documentation of where the HELOC money went every dollar, and you establish a repayment plan to restore that $60,000 to the estate. Third, you have no further unilateral involvement in any decisions about the property. Any communications go through Sandra's office. And if I do all that, he said slowly, what happens with the DA? I've agreed to hold off on any criminal referral for 90 days while you demonstrate compliance, I said. Sandra has a letter drafted. If you meet all 3 conditions, we revisit that decision in 90 days. And if I don't, then Sandra files the criminal referral tomorrow morning and the DA's office investigates elder financial fraud, forgery of a legal instrument, and fraudulent real estate transfer. Any of those alone carries real prison time. Together, I paused. I don't know exactly what together looks like, but I don't think you want to find out. There was a very long silence. You actually looked all this up, he said, not accusatory, almost like he was saying it to himself. I work in title and real estate law, I said. What did you think would happen? Another silence. Then, the money went to Marcus Chen. I didn't recognize the name. Who is Marcus Chen? A private lender. Unlicensed. I'd borrowed money from him twice over the past 3 years, and he was threatening to go after the business, threatening to involve other people. He paused. It was a bad situation. I was trying to get out of it. You could have told me, I said. He laughed, a short, unhappy sound. Yeah, you could have come to me before any of this happened, before the HELOC, before Grandma. I stopped. I pressed my hand flat on the table in front of me. You could have told me you were in trouble. I know, he said. And then, quietly, I'm sorry, Maya. I didn't say anything for a moment. I know you are, I said finally. That doesn't fix what you did, but I know you are. He signed the corrective deed 2 days later. Sandra's office received the documentation for the HELOC expenditures. Within a week, it was all there, wired to an account linked to Marcus Chen, exactly as my brother had said. Sandra passed the information about the unlicensed lender to a colleague who dealt with financial fraud, because that wasn't something I was going to just let go. The repayment plan for the $60,000 was structured over 4 years. My brother sold his car and his motorcycle and put the proceeds toward the first payment. He took a second job. I don't know if it makes me a bad person to say that watching him do that didn't feel good, it just felt correct. Like a number being moved to the right column in a ledger. The elderly couple who rented 14 Wren Hollow Lane, their names are Evelyn and George, and they've been in that house for 3 years. They still live there. I went over a few weeks after everything settled and sat in the backyard with Evelyn, and she showed me what she'd done with my grandmother's garden. She'd kept it mostly the same. The climbing roses on the back fence, the raised herb beds, the Japanese maple in the corner that my grandmother had planted 30 years ago. Evelyn said she hoped that was okay, that she'd tried to take care of it the way Ruth always had. I told her it was more than okay. I told her it was exactly right. My brother and I don't have the same relationship we used to have. I don't know if we ever will. There's a specific kind of damage that happens when someone you trust lies to your face for months, when you replay every conversation and realize how carefully the deception was maintained, how many times the warmth was performance, covering something colder underneath. You don't stop loving a person because of that, but you stop being able to see them the same way. You start to understand that the person you loved was real, and the person who lied to you was also real, and they are the same person, and that's something you just have to hold. We talk occasionally, cordially. He's working his second job on weekends and making his payments on schedule. He doesn't ask about the house anymore. I asked Sandra once, after everything wrapped up, whether she thought I'd made the right call giving him the 90-day window instead of going straight to the DA. She thought about it for a moment. Then she said, "I think you made the call that lets you sleep at night and still gets the outcome you needed. That's usually the right call." I've thought about that a lot. About what it means to protect something your grandmother built, not just the physical structure of it, the wood and plaster and the rose vines, but the intention she put into it when she sat the two of you down and said, "Together." About what it costs to be the person in the family who sees the numbers clearly, who knows what the documents say, who cannot pretend not to understand what she is looking at. It costs something. It always does. The responsible one, the practical one, the one who handles the spreadsheets and reads the fine print. People think that's a cold role to play. They don't see how much of it is love. They don't see that the reason you know the numbers so well is because you care so much about what the numbers are protecting. My grandmother built her whole life in that house, and when her family tried to sell it out from under itself, I was sitting at a desk in a title company office on a slow Tuesday afternoon, and I saw the address, and I knew what it meant, and I had 48 hours, and I used every single one of them. The Japanese maple in the backyard is putting out new leaves right now. Evelyn texted me a photo of it last week. It looks exactly the way it looked when my grandmother was alive, bright and stubborn, and very much still there. Some things are worth the fight. Some things you hold on to not because it's easy, but because the person who planted them trusted you to. And sometimes the best thing you can ever do for the people you love is to make absolutely sure that the people who wanted to take it from them never get the chance to try again.